that joining us now is Treasury Spokesperson for Reform UK, Robert Jenrick. Very good morning to you, Mr Jenrick.
Morning, good to see you.
Robert, can we ask you first of all just what you thought of the Prime Minister's performance in the Commons yesterday? I was struck by the fact that he said very explicitly that, you know, the optimum thing to do is to go after these missiles before they're launched, to go after the launchers, yet still seems to want to limit the UK to going after them once they're in the air, with all the inherent dangers that brings. What did you make of what he said?
I thought it was a very weak performance. You know, he does not come across like a leader. He just seems to be constantly vacillating. He doesn't know what he thinks. And he's worried primarily about a strict adherence to international law rather than what is in our national interest and how can we best support our friends and allies around the world. He's more interested in taking the advice of Lord Hermer, his legal mate, than he is about doing what's necessary to protect our troops and their families on our base in Cyprus. Look, no one should mourn the death of the Ayatollah and the demise of his regime. This was an evil regime in Iran, but more importantly for us here, it's also been a regime that has attacked our own interests. Its proxies have fired missiles at British flagged vessels out at sea. It's attacked people here in the United Kingdom, getting spies and agents over on small boats, and they've supplied some of the weapons like the IEDs that led to the deaths of British troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. So its demise or pressure on that regime is a good thing. But what we want is a Prime Minister who actually knows what he thinks, is leading, is a reliable ally on the international stage and is protecting our interests. And we just don't see that from Keir Starmer at the moment.
Well, you've just alluded to it there, Mr Jenrick, but how concerned are you about security in this country off the back of this escalating conflict in the Middle East? We know that there are sleeper cells in this country. There's been 20 or so Iranian-backed plots foiled in the past few years. How do we keep British citizens safe on the streets of Britain?
Well, it's a very good question. And look, the truth is, this government, and frankly the last Conservative government of which I was a part, were hopelessly naive when it came to Iran and its influence here on our soil in the United Kingdom. For example, both governments have failed to prescribe, to ban the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, an organisation that does have roots in the UK. That should be done immediately so that our security service and police can arrest those individuals with links to it here, can freeze its bank accounts, stop it having activities here. Iranian-backed organisations like cultural institutions, which are simply fronts for their agents, need to be closed down, those individuals removed from the country, and an absolute zero-tolerance attitude to anyone with links to this regime. If they're here in the UK, if they're threatening our citizens, then they should be deported immediately. That's what I want to see Keir Starmer frankly say, that he's going to turn the tide on all this malign influence and have a crackdown now to protect British citizens.
To that end, how concerning is it to see the deputy leader of a political party, the Green Party, attending an event mourning the Ayatollah?
I thought it was very, very sad to think that a political party that's gaining some traction in some elements in the country has a deputy leader who is out on the streets of our country mourning, celebrating the life of someone who not only was an evil dictator, one of the world's longest serving dictators for his own people, but actually brought about the deaths of our own citizens. Think of those young men who fought bravely for our country in Iraq and Afghanistan, who died at the behest of IEDs and weapons that were supplied by the proxies of Iran. And here you've got somebody who is a British politician who presumably aspires to be in the House of Commons behind me, actively celebrating that man. And he wasn't alone either. You saw, for example, University College London students celebrating or mourning the life of this individual as well. It speaks to a broader truth that unfortunately sectarian politics has taken hold in some parts of our country, particularly pockets of our big cities. And that's got to be confronted head on. Some of us, myself included, have been talking about this for a long time, and sometimes it was a lonely cause. Parts of our political and media class, not GB News, it has to be said, have scorned people who've been making this argument. But now it's here in plain sight. We can all see it, and it's got to be fought. And that's one of the many reasons why we do need a big change in this country. We need to get a reform government in who will change this and have an absolute zero tolerance attitude towards extremism of any kind, and begin to assert a strong, unifying national identity in which these kind of attitudes and anti-British views will have no place.
Robert, just want to get your reaction to this breaking news that we've got coming into us in the newsroom. This is US President Trump. It's an interview with the Sun newspaper. He says he is sad to see that the relationship with Britain is obviously not what it was. He has criticised Sir Keir Starmer directly. He says he has not been helpful. I never thought I'd see that. I never thought I'd see that from the UK. We love the UK. He also blamed the Prime Minister's botched deal to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, this direct quote. We call it the woke island. What's your response to those comments from the US President?
Well, look, the UK and the US have stood side by side for generations. It's an incredibly important relationship, and so much of our defence and security depends on the United States. You see how weak our armed forces sadly are today as a result of mismanagement and underinvestment. So for us now to be perceived to be an unreliable friend and ally to the United States is concerning. But what I'm most worried about is not what foreign powers like the United States, even if they're our friends, think about the UK. It's how we're doing ourselves to protect our own interests. That is what your GB News viewers will be most concerned about. And if we've got our own base, sovereign territory over in Cyprus, being attacked by Iranian drones, and you've got a Prime Minister who still won't do things, who won't take action, was vacillating, worried about the legal advice that his human rights lawyer mate was sending to him, rather than protecting those troops, their families on that base, then that makes me feel this man just isn't fit to be Prime Minister, isn't suited to the task of being Prime Minister at a time when we're facing such challenges as we are at the moment.
OK, Robert Jenrick, thank you so much for joining us this morning on GB News Breakfast. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, joining us now is the Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor, Con Coughlin. Good morning to you, Con. Just want to pick up on the last points there from Robert Jenrick and the woeful state as well of our defences. Where is the Royal Navy? Not their fault, of course. They've been so depleted. We don't even have missile defence destroyers out there trying to protect the likes of RAF Akrotiri.
Well, that's a good point, Mark, and good morning to you both. I think when Keir Starmer says, he's acting to defend our national interests, then it's a fair question to ask, how's he doing this? And the fact that we are now relying on, as I understand it, 2 Greek frigates and Greek aeroplanes to defend our sovereign base in Cyprus shows you just how out of depth this Prime Minister is, how out of depth this government is, because, for weeks, the Americans have been signalling that they were going to take some form of military action against Iran if the nuclear negotiations didn't bear fruit. They've assembled the biggest force seen in the region since the Iraq War. And what have we done? Zero. And as you say, Mark, we've got Type 45 destroyers, some of the most sophisticated warships in the world that can spot missiles and drones from miles away and take them out. And if Starmer had been seriously interested in defending our national interests, then the very least he could have put one of those in the Mediterranean or closer to the Gulf, but he hasn't.